But I learned that there's forms of economic dependency that are universal and widespread throughout society and throughout the world. And I've come up with principles of economic dependency. I've actually invented a new word. I call it undependence. And it's actually a verb, and it means the process of going from being dependent to being independent. And I've tried to come up with a blueprint, both for individuals and for governments, for how to get out of a situation of economic dependency. And I've gone from not having a nickel in my pocket the first time around to being rejected 32 times and being told by everybody that you're going to be beat up. This time to having as my editor Peter C. Newman, which is a whole experience in itself and might be worthy of a book in itself. He's a very interesting person and a very good editor. And I've actually written my next book for the US market, but it applies to everybody, and it also draws a lot on my experience as an Aboriginal person. So, people have asked me, why is this important now? How come we've been prepared to leave this situation, the situation of Aboriginal people, as it is for a couple of hundred years, and sweep the issues and the problems into the backwater bureaucracy of the Department of Indian Affairs? Why is it important now? Essentially, who cares? Well, I had two answers to that question. My first answer has to do with me being an Aboriginal person. What I wondered was, the first thing that I wondered, I was essentially a tree in the Aboriginal forest, and I couldn't see the forest. And I wondered, why was it that Aboriginal people had to go through so much misery? Why was it that relatives of mine were going through things that people in the mainstream society didn't seem to be? Why did we have a system in which, in 2006, the United Nations singled out Canada as number 7th in the world for the standard of living that we enjoy, but if we look just at First Nations, we would be 56th or something like that, down with a lot of third world countries? Why is it that Canada is justifiably a first world country, but it's a third world country for Aboriginal people? Why do we have a system that in particular beats up our women and our children so badly? Why is it that young Aboriginal women ages 15 to 25 are more than 8 times as likely to commit suicide? Why did the Supreme Court of Canada point out in one of its decisions relating to the jailing of an Aboriginal woman in the prairies that Aboriginal women are 130 times more likely to become incarcerated and jailed as compared to everybody else? Why is it that we represent 3.5% about of the population nationally, and by minimum estimates, our kids make up over 30% of the kids in child welfare care? Really disturbing thing about that statistic is from the time that it was last measured, that figure increased by 70%. In high Aboriginal population provinces like Saskatchewan and Manitoba, the number of children in child welfare care is over 80%. How can we continue on with the system that is literally resulting in us sending our women and our children down the plank and feeding them to the sharks. In BC, northern BC, we have what has been called the Highway of Tears. It's a highway where Aboriginal women have been hitchhiking, and there have been dozens of women murdered. In Australia, a couple of years ago, there was a study done that was released at a major conference. And that study concluded that the Aborigine tribes of Australia may be the first generation of tribes that may be made extinct by a preventable disease like diabetes. That's an astounding thing to say. We can prevent something, but we're kind of sleepwalking to our deaths. So, why this is important now to me is we have to start offering our young people some sense of hope. If you talk to a lot of the young people these days, they will say they don't care. They feel they've inherited a system which doesn't recognize them. They say they have no power. All of the power is concentrated in the hands of a few elites, and nothing they will do will ever make a difference. And so why try? That's the attitude of a lot of our young people. And I believe it's in my generation's hands and responsibility to try to make the systemic changes to encourage real change so that we can offer our people some hope. I think that we need to start talking about this. We need to engage in the dialogue, and I think everybody should be part of the dialogue as long as the dialogue is respectful. Aboriginal people have been beaten up so much in our history that we don't like it when we get the sense that people are beating us up. But I think that it's time for us to engage in a dialogue aimed at making a difference. It's time we do something about this. If you want to know what most of our people think about this system that we've inherited, they voted with their feet on it. 70% of our people don't live in our communities because of lack of various kinds of opportunities. And I think in discussing these things, we should do so in the spirit of the famous Apache chief Cochise, who said in one of his speeches, he said, we should speak straight so that our words go like spirits to our hearts. This is the way our ancestors used to speak. And I'm sure if I understood your language, probably that's the way the elder was speaking this morning. We have to start talking straight about it. We have to be respectful because we have to do something about it.